ihr da seid. Entschuldigt die kurze Verspätung. Wir freuen uns sehr, euch heute begrüßen zu dürfen bei der Veranstaltung Archäologie des Digitalen zur Rolle von Technologie und Kunst im digitalen Räumen. Unserer letzten Veranstaltung für dieses Jahr im Collaboratory. Wir haben schon ein paar hinter uns gebracht. Mein Name ist Jacqueline Seliger und ich bin zusammen mit Tanja Schomacker, Tanja Schumacher zusammen die Projektleitung im Collaboratory. Und bevor sich die Sprechenden gleich genauer selbst vorstellen, von mir noch ein paar kurze technische und organisatorische Hinweise. Ihr könnt während der Veranstaltung Fragen stellen im Chat oder Anmerkungen. Die können wir dann auch in die Diskussion spiegeln. Also wir geben die weiter an die Sprechenden. Bitte achtet dabei auf die Respektikette und geht achtsam und respektvoll miteinander um. Und auch wenn die Veranstaltung gleich in Englisch stattfinden wird, könnt ihr die Fragen auch auf Deutsch posten. Wir übersetzen die dann, wenn nötig. Und weil die Veranstaltung auf Englisch stattfindet, wechsle ich jetzt auch mal ins Englische. Welcome to all our non-German speaking participants. And we are very happy to welcome you to our talk today, Archaeology of the Digital on the Role of Technology and Art in Digital Spaces. If you have any questions or comments during the talk, just feel free to post them in our chat, and we will include them in the discussion. Please pay attention to our Respektikette and be careful and respectful with another. Before our speakers will introduce themselves later on, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here today with us. Nina Prada will lead us through the evening as our host. She's an artist, writer, independent publisher, and curator. She has written for Texte zur Kunst, Specs, Arts of the Working Class, and many more. Her research focuses on print and specializing in alternative media and publishing processes. So Nina, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello to all you virtual beings, avatars, and users in this new parallel universe known as the Collaboratory at Bachhaus. Hello, little bouncy balls. Tonight, we hope to excavate perspectives on digital space and how they provide artistic collaboration. How can participation be realized? And what role does technology play in the construction of this digital reality? So therefore, tonight is entitled Digital Archaeology. So we are joined by a star lineup tonight on our digital stage. And I'll be introducing them one by one through the following show and tell. And then afterwards, we will reconvene in a sort of more communal discussion and look forward to your questions as well. So joining us today on the stage is Klaus Neuburg. He is a designer, and together with Simon Roth, he is Serve and Volley Studio for graphic and interaction design, which was responsible for the conception and design of the Collaboratory. He is a professor for media design with a focus on interactive media at the Australian University of Applied Arts Braunschweig, Wolfenbüttel, and co-founder of the journalistic NGO FRO. As a trained architect, his work and research focus on the relationship between design, technology, and society, and the meaning of space in the digital and physical world. So without further ado, Klaus Neuburg.
Okay, hi, Nina, thanks for the introduction. And I would like to share my screen directly. And we come to that later. And say just a few words maybe about us, and then I would mainly introduce to the Collaboratory and where we are in right now. Serve and Volley, that's us. No, that's us. Simon is on the right hand side, and that's me. We're Serve and Volley, and this photo was taken in the end of August, where we just finished or launched the Collaboratory. So that was an important day this year. Apart from that, we're as you said, studio for interactive and graphic design. But what I would like to mention is that you mentioned Fro. Fro is was a magazine, now is an NGO, and we did a lot of also collaborative workshops with Fro in different spots in Germany and Eastern Europe, and we worked on making a magazine in a short time. And as we talk later on, maybe also about magazines, I just want to mention it. And we did it with on old Heidelberg printing machines, or also as digital platforms, for example, in Siberia. So collaborating on a topic together was or it's something that is very important for us, also in our work, not only professional work, but also with the NGO Fro. And with that NGO, we also did a workshop in Hamm, where we tried to add a kind of a digital layer to a city with augmented reality, where we digged into the archives of the city of Hamm and tried to tell some stories in that space, in that public space, and added some 3D stuff and stories in that space. So the relationship between the digital and the real spaces is something that was really interesting for us at all. So we were quite happy when we were asked to join the collaboratory, and we started with a very simple idea that Lehmbachhaus with Tanya and Jacqueline came to us. Let's make a digital open space. Let's do that. And we found out, okay, maybe it's a good idea to say, let's make a prototype of a digital open space. And we finally we started, when we started the project, we just said, okay, let's make an experiment about that and see what happens. So that was really, for me, a very interesting experience to really dive in, because it was also founded. This is the name of this fund, but really dive in this cold water of not only the digital space, but also collaborating in this kind of relationship. And so when we started, we just had this idea of a space that has no borders and doesn't make a difference between people, and where everything is possible, like throwing ice cream to the walls, and everything we can imagine. And the first sketches were quite crowded, quite colorful, and we really tried to understand what does it mean to have a kind of an open digital space. So where are we in that space? Who are we in that space? And from these very first rough visualizations, then together with Tillmann, who will be speaking later on also, and with the team of Lehmbachhaus, and Laura came to us, and the bigger team, we started to really imagine what does it mean to have this kind of a endless space, and put these modules, different kinds of functional modules, into that space. And then we found out also that we had to switch the perspective, actually, from this third, or from this eye level to this kind of a third person view. This process was 8 months hard working. Maybe we'll learn about that later when Tillmann also shares something about the technical process. but I would like to just quickly go through that collaboratory to see how it works. So you see, I'm really now in that space where you all also are on the stage, or maybe you're also watching from YouTube. So I don't know why I chose this gold ball now, and if you haven't done that, hi Laura, sorry, Laura. If you haven't done it, maybe you can just wander around and see what happens. So the basic idea is really that that we can use the space for everything we want to. So this is an initiative with the youth, how do you say, team of the Limba House. Hi Laura, hey. And maybe there's some strange things happening. You can't hear it because I forgot to switch on the checkbox for sound. Or maybe now it works. You can just wander around, and there are some strange things also, still strange things lying around there, and I would like to join. For example, this smiley. So I can, when I'm in this space, I'm able to look around and see, okay, well, there are some pictures, don't know, objects, I don't know what you get. You always get this information here, and you see that this piece in the collaboratory is connected to an artwork in the collection of the Lehmbach House. So you might learn something about this piece of art in the museum, but this is not, this is not the only thing. You can also play, for example, with this light interaction, which also can also change my color, which is funny doing when you're alone, but even makes more fun, of course, if you're together, because that's the idea. So we try to implement some interactions that somehow Jacqueline, thanks. Yeah, let's play together. So to foster, to help, or to support people interacting. So this is a playful way to interact, and there are also possibilities to work together. So we have the scene module, which will Tim introduce later on, where you can collaborate actually on a magazine. So I will try to, I have it. So you can see my password, and now you can maybe collaborate on that magazine. So you have here like a safe space where you can work together. And for me as a designer, this is a great perspective to see all these blank pages to fill. And so I will try if that works. Maybe this is okay. So now it's happening, and and you can easily also again play around and play around, and for example change all that stuff and make something interesting, not what maybe I don't know, something, and then you can save it. So this is a very short introduction of that space, and I'm not sure if I'm already over the time. So I would close this now and just say a very few sentences about that. We really had a very big team. These are only a few. This is the core team, maybe. Martina Tillmann for the technology, Laura, Tanja, Jacqueline from the Limburg House, and not Tim, that's Simon and Klaus. And I'm very happy now that we have Tillmann, who was not only had to work out these ideas, but also had so much ideas. And Tim, with this great work, also made this special piece possible. And then Jessica Clark, I just would like to mention the last person here on stage tonight, who I just got to know by accident, or I don't know, by chance. And I think she has a really broad overview about how to deal or what art and technology has in common, or how this should what potential this also have for collaborative creative work. So it's, for me, it's not only about the digital space, it's about reclaiming this digital space and do that together. Okay, so that was all from me, I would say.
Thank you so much, Klaus Neuburg, for that wonderful introduction to the collaboratory and why we're all here together. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Tilman Reif, who holds a degree in media informatics and AV media, and his passion for interaction, design, and user experience is evident in his 22 years of work for large international companies, as well as in numerous freelance and artistic projects such as the iPhone game Doppelganger or the award-winning game machine Pain Station. As co-founder of Büro für Brauchbarkeit, he's responsible for the overall programming of the collaboratory. So, Tilman Reif, please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, hi, Nina. Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. I will start sharing my screen as well, even though I don't have a fancy presentation like Klaus, but I opened a few browser tabs so I can guide myself along. Yeah, as Nina said, I'm Tilman from the Büro für Brauchbarkeit. We are a small studio in Cologne, and we were basically approached by Klaus when it came to developing the collaboratory. We have been working together with Simon, and we've known each other. We ran an exhibition space together here in Cologne. And the Büro für Brauchbarkeit is a small independent studio. We are like 7 people right now, and we do a lot of work for, of course, commercial work, but we also do a lot of artistic work. Most of us have an artistic background, or have worked in the art scene, media art, or have strong interest in cultural and art stuff. And this also shows in a lot of our projects, like we worked for the Videonale, a video festival in Bonn, or now here for the collaboratory, but we also work for Rewe or Red Bull Media House. So it's different things, but always a strong focus on creative art and cultural things, like, or for example, the AIC Cologne is a portal we built for the independent art initiatives here in Cologne. They're all gathered into this platform and can share their events and stuff. And we always like to play with technology, and we always see also the technology as, or the coding as part of the design. Like, for example, we have this small feature here where you can interact with this little line and let it flop, and it will react when you scroll the site. And all you guys are in my way now to access my tabs. And for example, we also last year when Corona hit us, we built this little catapult helping you to throw away your sorrows. Like, for example, I can write something here, collaborate. Oh, Oh, it's even harder. Okay, like this. No, almost. And then you can click it, and the words become physical objects, or the characters, and then you can shoot them away. So you can, whatever annoys you today, like rain or whatever, you can then just sling it out. And it even had some pre-recorded Christmassy kind of ASCII art in there. Yeah, so this is the way the stuff we like doing, and that we try to bring into our commercial as well as artistic projects as well. And I can't reach my tabs because of all the Zoom stuff. Yeah, there's also this app. I mean, personally, I have a very long background in coding, like more than 25 years, and I've done a lot of things like programming for OS X or programming for iPhones, microcontroller programming. I've done graphic design. Currently, I'm very much into doing UX design, like creating prototypes, click dummies, and then doing these kind of things. So I have a very broad range of creativity and working with media. And I've also done quite a few art projects myself, together with my colleague or friend Volker. We've been doing like interactive game installations since 2000, and yeah, we've created this famous, it's really kind of famous machine where you play against a friend, you play Pong, and you get pain for each mistake you make in the game. And in the end, when you lose, you're the loser. Here's an image from the Yerba Buena Center in San Francisco, where they had to hire a lawyer so everybody who wanted to play had to sign a contract because it's so dangerous. And America is so, yeah, the suing is quite heavy in America. So it's quite quite a few interactive works. Let me show a few more. Like this is his master's voice. It's a robotic board game where you control the robots by singing to them. You had to create different sounds. That's also, yeah, here we have Harald Schmidt and Biolek singing to the balls. So it's a funny thing. And another project which is quite nice is the Ferminator. It's like a huge pinball machine built into a VR helmet where you put your head in and then you play in a first-person perspective against the pinball, which is actually Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonated in there. And let me show what else do we have. There was one more. Like Facebox. It's the smallest social network that you can imagine. So two people put their head inside and they see each other face to face, which is kind of intimidating nowadays. Kind of. I mean, this is totally not Corona safe, this device. We thought about making it like 1.5 meters longer, so you can keep the distance. But yeah, the reason I'm showing this is like in all of this work, we have been criticizing media companies, big tech companies. We have also always tried to create installations where you play together, but in the physical world and not on the screen, just to work against this trend of isolation on digital devices. And we were quite successful and have lots of exhibitions, but then Corona came and none of these things would work anymore. So it was really, really bad for us, or for what our intention really was. And then, of course, came along the collaboratory, and for us it was quite a big chance, or quite a cool project to create our own virtual space and playground, because that's what we like to do, like play with technology, make playful things and stuff like that. And even with Corona, it was clear that everybody was being drawn into these digital platforms, like everybody used Zoom, everybody's using Teams, even my kids use Teams in school, and they go to Facebook, Netflix, whatever these platforms are. But all of these platforms are like big tech, commercial driven platforms that don't give a shit about your privacy or whatever, or what they do to small kids. You all know the story. So for us, it was really important, or the great thing about the collaboratory is that a cultural, it's missing the words. Like we as artists and cultural people and a non-commercially oriented a group try to create our own digital space, our own digital platform, and that was really interesting. But at the same time, and that's also very interesting because everybody was familiar with Miro, with Teams, with YouTube, and everybody had these expectations of what digital platforms could be able to do. Like, yeah, we want to collaborate. Yeah, we want to draw in Miro, or yeah, we want to share videos. We want to upload our videos, and we as the ones who had to build it always had to say, oh, whoa, wait a minute. We have 1 year, we are like 3 people, and we only have a limited time and budget. So we always have to temper down the expectations, basically. That was quite an interesting process for us. And as Klaus mentioned, it was an experiment and it was a prototype. And so it also turned out for us, technically, especially how much could we realize within this given scope, and how much would we really be able to do. And of course, as I said, we in the beginning, we had a very diverse team of people, like the youth group from Krembach House, us, the programmers, the designers, who always have crazy ideas about everything and don't think about technology. And then we had all these cultural and content driven expectations from Tanja and Jacqueline and the Lehmbach House in general. And we had to find like a way of bringing this all together and then finding a common ground to realize this. And yeah, we in the beginning we looked at a couple of platforms that exist, like the Mozilla hubs or the Gather Town and all these things that you know today. And then we try to find out what things would we like to have in our space. And of course, we wanted to have like the feeling of space. And like a 3D space, it was always visible in the first screens. So we knew, okay, yeah, we had to use a 3D kind of engine. And then we knew we wanted to bring people together, so everybody should see the other one while he's there. So we knew we had to use like something like multi-game server kind of technology. And then we wanted it to be playful, and so we knew we had to use physics in some sort of matter. And we were always like, "Ooh, can we really do this?" But in the end, we actually came quite far. And this is where it gets a little bit techy and nerdy. I've created this small graphic to show the technical setup a little bit of the collaboratory, because it's also interesting. Everything we use here is non-commercial, open source software, frameworks, libraries. So we did not depend on any of these commercial platforms except for YouTube for the videos, because this is really something that we couldn't realize. But here, for example, in the front end, we have, of course, the 3D space and all this interface around it, where we use the Vue.js, the JavaScript application framework. Then we have this 3JS. It's a huge library to build, to show 3D content. We use Enable 3D because it wraps 3JS and makes it a little bit easier to use and brings some other features. We have Paper.js because it's very good for animating vector graphics. We have Meta.js for the physics, and we have P5.js, which Tim brought along with for the Zine module. And in the back end, we have, of course, we needed some place to store our content. So we had to choose a CMS. So we chose Kirby for that. And then we had to build an API. So because the collaboratory is 3D space, in some way had to be able to communicate with the CMS to get content and write content to the CMS. And then we have a multi-user server, which builds on Node, just as a server technology. And then we have like this physics engine, which runs technically just the mathematics run on the server, and it's all the positions of every object and in space is being distributed to the clients, and they render it in 3D. And we use Socket.io for the communication. I think Tim will talk about this a little bit. And then we have a description of the whole world, which is just basically a text file that describes where all the objects are lying around. And yeah, this all together is also, the whole setup is duplicated because we have one environment where we develop and do the current testing and stuff, and then we have the live environment. So everything, it's basically at least 3 projects by 2. So we have like six projects to handle and maintain in this project. So it's quite a big setup and all the technology behind it, and it took quite a while to get it all working together because you have all these connections and Schnittstellen. But in the end, we got it working, and it works kind of well. I don't know how much time.
Yeah, I think that your time's up.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's a perfect segue to Tim Rodenbröcker and his part in the collaboratory. Tim Rodenbröcker is a designer, educator, and community builder. He's specifically concerned with teaching basic skills in creative coding and sees this as a valuable approach for a courageous, critical, and reflective approach to digital technologies. Since 2019, he has been developing his own e-learning platform, which aims to simplify the entry into the subject. And as a designer, he has worked for many notable clients in recent years. For the Lenbach House, he adapted his P5 studio to the collaborative zine model that you see in the collaboratory. So Tim, please tell us more about your zine publishing tool.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really, really cool. I really like the discussion. And the more I think about this whole project, the more I understand that this is a really very valuable experiment, especially because we now have this situation where Meta is trying to, kind of create this commercial parallel universe. And this is really a very, very interesting project that can kind of, be an independent solution, an independent perspective on that problem. Anyway, I'm Tim. I'm, as you already said, Nina, thank you. I'm a creative coding educator. This is basically what I do full time now. I've got a Patreon community, and I'm teaching creative coding with processing and P5.js, which are 2 technologies that I really, really like. They are very open. They have a very strong message, a very critical, skeptical message towards technologies. They are claiming for diversity, also in a very man-dominated field, which is super important, I guess. And I think this is something I'm also really fighting for in my community. Anyway, I was approached by Klaus one day, and he asked me to collaborate on the collaboratory, which was really cool. I created an application before, and that's what I do pretty often. Let me just share my screen quickly, and I show you what I'm talking about. This is not the app. Or maybe quickly, before we dive into the collaboratory topic, I would like to show you a little bit of what I'm doing. I hope, can you see my website here? Is that okay? Yeah, great. Okay, this is my website, which is basically an e-learning platform for creative coding. I'm working on this project since many years already, and now it's becoming, let's say, a little business also for me. I'm inviting many people from the community, giving talks. I have this vision of building an online school for creative coding, making this topic accessible for people that don't have access to a university education and stuff. So I find this super, super valuable. Creative coding is for me not just a way to build new design tools, even if I'm very focused on graphic design. That's basically my background. But I think, as I already mentioned, creative coding is a way to interact with technology in a critical way. And that's what I find extremely interesting. And this philosophical perspective is something I'm very, very interested in. Anyway, I am doing courses, and I have a Discord server where we meet and chat and talk. I create tutorials, weekly tutorials for my Patreon community, and I also do a lot of research. And one of my projects that I've created is the P5 Studio application. So P5 Studio, the idea behind was, P5.js was not that long out there, right? It was, I think it has been started as a JavaScript equivalent to processing around 2013. And I saw that it's possible to use P5.js as a, let's say, component in a software ecosystem where you can build real applications for design in the web browser. So this could sound a little bit boring or a little bit like, very abstract, but from my perspective, this is revolutionary because of the reason we can use web technologies, we can use the web browsers, which are basically installed on all our digital devices. We can use these technologies to build real software with web technologies. We can use these technologies to build real software, which is amazing because, it's so much easier now to build real applications. And this is also one more step to the liberation and against proprietary software companies. Anyway, so P5 Studio is a poster design application built with Vue.js and P5.js, HTML and CSS. And as you can see, you've got something like a canvas here and a poster format. And I just thought this was really just a prototype. So I was working on this about, I think, 2 weeks or something. So, and this is a real design surface. That means I'm able to render both videos and save high resolution images from it. So, and through having access to, through programming the whole stuff, I can basically create an individual design system in form of a software, which is very, very interesting. And in the last years, I've been also building many tools for clients that kind of have a specific design system in themselves. So I've got a quick video, which is an accelerated view of how I design a poster. Let me just make this full screen here. Yeah, you've got something like an image selection overlay. You can select some fonts. You can just tweak everything. You can rotate these images. And the best thing is that you really can export this even in high resolution. So in theory, you could build an application like that that is able to output printable files that can be sent to a printer or something, just with web technologies. I mean, we are talking about websites here, right? A website years ago was just a medium, something that holds information. But today, a website is a software development platform. And this is extremely powerful. So P5.js because P5.js kind of is the JavaScript or the web equivalent to processing, which has the superpower that you can just share these sketches and these things that you create with P5.js across the world through a web server. So that means you create something interactive and you can make this quick or this interaction accessible to anyone in the world by just sending a link, which is absolutely mind-blowing, I think. And then I have been approached by Klaus to kind of adapt this idea of this P5 Studio application. What's really interesting here is that in the beginning, we've been thinking about how could we create a collaborative design experience, but we were more thinking more freely about it. But in the end, I just came up with the idea that we just could adapt exactly this prototype to build the zine module for the collaboratory application upon. And this really made this whole development and design process much quicker, because we really had this kind of layout, this kind of foundation that we was able to build upon, right? And yeah, this is it. This is the collaboratory zine design tool. Kind of the very, very, it's really an adaptation of the P5 Studio application. We just created this, this 2-page zine layout, and this is just a CSS shadow that kind of fakes that it's a double page. But the cool thing about the collaboratory application is that with the work of Tillmann and Büro für Brauchbarkeit, we were able to create this in a collaborative way. We didn't build it in a collaborative way. That's what we also did, but we built it that other people could collaborate on one and the same project. So that's pretty cool. So my application, my prototype has only been able to work on one single computer in the front end, but through WebSockets, which is a technology that you can use to sync data between multiple computers. It is possible to make this design process collaborative so that many people can work on the same magazine. It is not possible, by the way, to work on the same layout at the same time. I mean, that would probably need about many weeks of more work or even months, but it is possible to work on the same project with the help of a very intelligent database structure that Tillman built. And yeah, I'm super amazed about the result in the end. I think this is amazing. And again, we've got this situation where Meta is going to kind of building a commercial proprietary virtual reality universe. And this is a really very interesting and very early stage of a way of thinking how we could build our own digital spaces, also with open source software. And that's what I really like about this. Yeah, that's my perspective on this project.
Thank you so much, Tim, that we can see this sort of evolution of your prototype into the zine making tool. Mm-hmm. And last, but certainly not least, our grand finale is Jessica Clark, who is a media futurist, journalist, and strategist whose work connects ideas across art, technology, and politics. She founded Dot Connector Studio in November 2013. Clients have included the National Endowment of the Arts, the Ford Foundation, the Knight Foundation, the Wikimedia Foundation, the Internet Archive, and other philanthropic and media organizations. She also co-founded Immerse, an online publication about emerging storytelling, and currently she is a research affiliate at MIT's Open Doc Lab. So Jessica.
Thank you, Nina, and thanks everybody. It's really fascinating. So I'm going to put a bunch of links into the chat before I share my screen so that you can follow along. I have been studying the evolution of technology and participatory media since before the internet had pictures. And back when all of this was just, you know, cyberpunk novelists imagining how we were going to be building the metaverse. And now here we are. So the kind of research that I've been doing is very much meta research around these types of participatory and collaborative artistic projects. One of the recent reports that I worked on with a partner called 8 Bridges Workshop is called Tech as Art, supporting artists who use technology as a creative medium. So this was commissioned by the National Endowment for the Arts back in 2019 before the pandemic. And we had a beautiful set of workshops planned that were all going to be in person that quickly became quite virtual as 2020 arrived. But we were able to pull it out and come up with some conclusions. So really looking at the ways in which makers are working both in legacy and traditional art spaces like museums and art schools, and then working outside of it across different disciplines to cobble together the types of experiments that we saw today. So just a few of the takeaways. So this tool building activity that we see represented in this panel is really fundamental to tech-centered art, and the idea that you can get under the hood, you can show how the things that you're making function is part of the philosophy and the approach of many of these artists. The field, we tried to define the field throughout the course of this 2-year study, and everybody kept saying, no, it's not just digital art. No, it's not just interactive art. So part of what we realized is like this field defies definition by design. Partially because it's happening across many different existing modalities, and partially because people who do this kind of work don't like to be labeled. So this moving between the physical and the digital, between dance and programming, all of these things kind of, you know, they're fun and experimental, but it creates some problems in trying to get money and trying to find places to show your work. So as a result, tech-centered artists have really depended on one another, like the processing organization that Tim was talking about and others, and creating their own hubs and exhibition spaces, and now like this explosion in marketplaces and NFTs. Schools or universities are a real breeding ground for these types of projects because they allow you to be multidisciplinary and to access complex, expensive equipment. As a result, people who are doing this work are scrambling to make a living. Some of them start businesses, some of them are just broke. Others are, cobbling together what we politely call portfolio careers. There's a lot of tension in the space around the relationship to capital and whether or not to be an entrepreneur, or whether that ruins your integrity. And then finally, as Tim and Tillman both mentioned, tech-centered artists are really at the forefront of grappling with the role of technology in society, picking it apart, critiquing it, creating alternatives, and this creates other opportunities to bring them into other kinds of work or other types of critical projects as to really demonstrate some of the problems that these large platforms and corporations are causing in society. So I'll just run through this real quick and give you a few highlights. This field is about 70 years old at this point. Started with experiments in light and communication, moving through media and music, kind of like wanders through different disciplines. And now we see all kinds of interesting permutations like bio art, obviously AR and VR projections, which have become more commercially viable, installations, etc. We did a set of profiles. So this artist who I love is named Onyx. He's strapped all these sensors to his body and he makes music with his biorhythms, and he does outdoor performances. Lots of other interesting people. There's this live coding movement, for example, where people will go to clubs called algo and do these things called algo raves, where they're showing the code that's generating the graphics in real time and sort of improvising with the code. One of the, obviously, social media has served as a medium and platform for experimentation and networking. Here's a little overview of the tool building process, which will look familiar given what we had just heard. People are working with these open source toolkits and a mix of commercial software and then hardware, and hacking those things together to create these projects which look like tools but themselves are art. And then they're finding ways to share them with others. So we kind of just heard the evolution of one of those in the previous presentations. So yeah, I put the link in the chat if you want to read all this cool stuff about these amazing artists and their bizarre futurist experiments. I have been doing this work also in the context of Immerse. Hang on a minute. I have to move my window so I can, yeah. Which is a publication, it's a zine, co-founded we co-founded it in 2016 with Sarah Wallison, who runs MIT's Open Documentary Lab, and Ingrid Kopp, who was running a bunch of experimental festivals at Tribeca and is now at Electric South in South Africa doing VR projects. Our theme this month, this fall actually, is making the metaverse, which when we started it, we were like, how will we explain what the metaverse is? Now it's just like a fire hose of stuff about the metaverse all the time. I'm also really interested in the intersection of the physical and the digital, like Klaus mentioned. So for a while, I was writing this interface everywhere column, which was about that. And then I kind of bailed because suddenly we were not physical, we were just digital, with the pandemic. So I put that on hold for a while. But one of the interesting series that we did with Immerse was also created out of MIT, this collective wisdom project, which is very relevant to what you've been talking about. And it's about the various ways in which people collaborate and co-create to do media and to tell stories and to build tools. So worth a read, pretty long, but very interesting. But I thought I would show you this cool interactive wheel because it really shows how there are these many different strands of collaborative practice that bring people together that sort of make the author the second point and bring people together, across industrial design, architecture, journalism and documentary, which is my space, like story. So this is fun. If you have some time, you can drill in and you can see, okay, for example, let's see what people mean when they say open space, new media documentary. Yeah, it just shows how there are these many different parallel avant-gardes, working across most of the US, but a lot of, this report, but globally, to forge new, often non-commercial or political ways of working that are outside the mainstream. The way that I met Klaus is, I don't actually know, I don't remember, but somehow he found me because I had created this other collaborative tool using Miro called the Impact Pack. I'm showing this screen to show you that you can actually go and install it yourself if you want to try it. It's a physical deck of cards that I made pre-pandemic for makers and artists and journalists and others to think about their theory of change for their work, who they're making it for, who they're making it with, what happens when they make it, and how to pay for it. Always important to bring that part in. As part of this other project called Making a New Reality, which was about how to ensure that emerging media platforms and tools are inclusive, we released this unintended outcomes suit. So the way that it works is you basically, here's what you're making, here's who you're making it for, here's how you're defining engagement, which is there's a bunch of instructions. How does it make people feel? What does it make them do? And then unintended outcomes. What happened anyway, even though you wish it hadn't? And then you can go in and kind of like do strategy stuff with these purple cards, and then you can try to figure out a business model if possible. So I do this work in collaboration with a bunch of networks. So I'm part of this new incubator at the New Museum, which is, I'm in this future memory cohort. It's a incubator for arts business model development. And I'm also part of a crazy thing that I love called the Guild of Future Architects, which are people coming from different disciplines who are quote unquote architecting the future to make it more beautiful and just. So I've been running this new news incubator as part of that. And I just see the DNA of this work again and again of collaboration, community focus, participation, hands-on experimentation, etc. And then finally, I just wanted to mention for your reference, if you haven't seen this, this is a project, one of the Guild of Future Architects people, Eli Pariser, who helped found Move On, which is a progressive movement, one of the early digital movement building efforts in the US, is now running this project called New Public, which is about how do we create spaces online that are more civically responsible, collaborative, creative, less horrendous, nobody's getting harassed, your data is not being sold, etc. So just thought I'd wrap it back around to some of the themes that I heard. That's the whistle stop tour, as we say in the US. Probably no one says that anymore, but you can look it up if you want to see what it means.
Thank you so much,
Good.
Jessica. I think that brings us right into our discussion in terms of that we live in inspiring and at the same time, as many of you have alluded to, terrifying times where digitization is on one hand understood as very forward-thinking. Digital and technological platforms afford extraordinary immediate ways of sharing, producing, uploading, exchanging, communicating. And on the other hand, there are very much totalitarian forms of assembly, paywalling, data collection, and discriminating surveillance challenges for our user safety. So maybe, Jessica, in this way, you could also elaborate on, I saw on the website for Dot Connector Studios, it says in its mission statement that it is interested in new forms of media and art to think about more just and joyful futures. So maybe you could share some strategies. How do you think digital space creates opportunity and possibility for precisely these more just and joyful futures?
Wouldn't that be nice? So, early on at the turn of this century, we all had a lot of hope for the democratizing potential of participatory media and the ways in which it would allow for gatekeepers to be bypassed and for voices to be heard and for people to organize. And sure, yes, it has, and it does. And the more capability and affordances that we have in the digital space to not only share information globally and to be instantaneous and to work together, the more those potentials are available to us, you know, in our project of trying to make the world less horrendous. Of course, we've learned that there are other dynamics at play, that it creates a space for bad actors to come in and spread misinformation and hate speech and violence. It creates the potential for large players in the space to really command and control and monetize attention, even as everybody is being their individual free speaking self. So there's a little bit of it feels like an arms race. You know, every new generation comes up with new platforms that they think are going to be liberatory, and some people use them that way and some people use them in these other ways. And so part of what I've been trying to figure out is how do we shorten the cycle of understanding that these dynamics are always going to be with us and that new affordances always create new, you know, opportunities for mischief. And then part of it is just psychological, right? Like, so given all of this, I mean, we're being asked as humans to really absorb and process and address so much more information and so much more terrifying and complicated information. There was this interesting article I just read about hyper objects, which is philosophy professor wrote about things that are so large you can't really comprehend them, but they're like ruling your life. Like, think about everything that's made out of concrete in the whole earth. You know, like, whoa. But these are the kinds of objects we're being asked to address, like climate change. So how do you create the environment in which you don't become overwhelmed and horrified by these possibilities? Part of it is through positive collaborative world building, bringing people together to tell stories, to make artifacts, to develop alternate narratives of a future in which we actually can thrive. The planet is not dying, politics is not ridiculous, etc. So I've been doing a lot of that with the Guild of Future Architects. We've been working on a project called 20 Decades of 2020, where we all got together at the beginning of the pandemic and we just tried to dream our way out of it backwards and forwards 10 decades at a time. And we then created characters that lived in these alternate realities that we wrote, and then wrote fictional pieces about them. And now it's like this wacky art book that kind of like you read from both sides and it opens up in the middle and stuff. So that's kind of that was my pandemic therapy. So how do we kind of find these opportunities around the web and with each other for whatever it is we're going to need therapy for, and use it as a creative fodder, you know? That's long answer, but hopefully interesting.
I think mischief and world building sound like very positive ways of tackling the dark parts of the digital world. And maybe Klaus, Tilman, and Tim, you could elaborate a little bit in the sort of process of creating the collaboratory, some ways that you cultivated and create or tried to create a sort of careful digital space. You mentioned this in your presentations. I also have to think specifically like in the digital zine part, the sort of image pool that you've chosen seems to also be like semi-curated in a way. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Klaus? Maybe.
Maybe I can say something about this overall thing, because this was, of course, that was a topic the whole time. This kind of hate speech thing. So of course you think, okay, we make a space, and obviously if you have a space in the public, like a real space, of course you can also, it can also happen that people come there and, you know, destroy it, and that's something that we have to deal with as our nature of the human beings somehow. So yeah, we had some kind of like mechanics, like approval mechanics, and something like that to ensure that finally that we won't have some kind of a discrimination or something going on there. Actually, I don't know. Maybe Laura could say if she had to really to delete stuff. I don't know actually, but it was a topic definitely. And actually, maybe before I also thought when Jessica just was talking about these different options we can go, like these different directions of the future. I was also thinking about the role of regulation. Actually, this is something we didn't talk about right now. So we said, okay, creative potential and everything, but of course maybe we also have to think about how do we regulate ourselves, or who does it actually, if not the companies do that. So I think this is a big topic, because we had this experience in our AR project that, for example, the municipal administration, we wanted to give our application, our app, to them, and we said, okay, now you can use it. And they said, okay, but we don't have somebody to deal with it. We don't have a kind of a ministry for digital spaces in our city. So this is something I think we have to deal, also to think about in the future.
One of the things we're doing at Immerse is we just put out the US government is trying to do an AI Bill of Rights to help people think about how to protect their privacy. So we've been sort of rounding up artists to contribute to that. And many of the projects I've worked on have ended up in the policy arena after a while. It takes a while for the tech stuff to filter through.
Many of you identify as coders or designers or media makers or educators. And Tim, you have described technology as a vehicle, I saw, and the scene model of the collaboratory is a way of tool making as artistic practice, you could say. And how do the tools and practices create agency within your respective works? So is the tool the art or the aid?
I don't know if I really exactly understand that question right. So what I say, or what I meant when I said that I think that coding is a vehicle is, it is, first of all, the technology that you use when you learn to code is a vehicle that brings you from A to B, and it doesn't have to do something with learning just the technology, but also it's a way of personal growth, just to learn to think differently about digitization. That's something I find extremely important when I teach my students to code, because it's not really just about learning something that later on leads to a job where you can earn money, but it's a philosophical tool to reflect on the technologies that we use every day. That's basically what I meant. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the zine making and publishing also has a digital history since at least the 80s, one could say, like the cyberpunk manifestos, arguably a cyborg manifesto by Donna Haraway, or xenofeminism, a politics of alienation by the collective Laboria Cubonics. So they all kind of set up parameters with these manifestos as well for like how to conduct oneself in these digital spaces. So myself, as an avid supporter of zine culture, I was playing around with the collaboratory zine publishing tool, which I found was a great way to communicate zine and publishing knowledge in a way. And speaks to so many beautiful things like gamification, storytelling, publishing practice, open access, and sort of playfulness. But there are laws in the digital setup of this new tool in a way. So cookies, copyright, ownership. So after I've produced my zine, like, yes, I can make a PDF, but who does it belong to now? Which are all very, as when you're coming from sort of like zine research, like I am, very touchy subject. So on the one hand, there's all this creative agency, which is all what zine making is about. And on the other hand, the zine's content is also deeply influenced by the image pool and the programming. So maybe you could talk about the difference between user versus creator and sort of this intersection of publishing, collective authorship, and digital infrastructures.
Yeah, I think, first of all, what I like the most about this zine making module is that it's really an attempt to build some features of proprietary software and make it public and make it accessible for anyone, right? That's what I really, really liked about it. And of course, there are many things that you have to deal with, like, you know, we have got this EU DSGVO, which is the GPDR, right? All these restrictions that just came to kind of limit also our possibilities in some way. Huge companies don't have problems with that because they have the lawyers and they have, you know, staff that's going to deal with all these problems. But when you create something by yourself with a small team, as we did it here, it really becomes very dangerous because we are not really informed about all the consequences and all the problems that could potentially happen. And for example, from my personal project, the community that I'm building, this is always something I'm quite concerned about. Like, I don't want to break any laws, and I always have to be very, very careful. I'm just a one-man show in a way, and so, but at the same time, I'm super excited and super happy to see that something like this is possible today, and I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in the next years in terms of web technologies and, you know, more people learning how to use them.
Yeah, it's interesting how the boundaries of copyright have been tested and stretched and remixed over the last 20, 30 years, you know, through a variety of industries. And one of the projects that I was a part of early on was really trying to define the value of copyright. You know, both obviously artists need to be paid for the stuff that they do, but then also in the US, the law allows for certain uses, you know, satire and commentary, and then the Creative Commons stuff came along and really allowed for people who care about participation and collaboration to set the terms. Now, I don't really know how that operates on a global scale, because, you know, I presume that in every country there are different copyright regimes. I could be wrong, but I do think it's interesting how the norms have changed, you know, where, well, people will now just grab somebody else's work without thinking of it and stick it on Tumblr or whatever else. And then it's interesting, again, I brought up NFTs before, to see how people are trying to reclaim some of the benefits of copyright in terms of being able to, you know, reap some value from their work without necessarily hurting the circulation of their objects. So it's another space of really fertile experimentation and obviously monetization and crazy speculation, like so many things right now.
Yeah, the question, or what I was also thinking about, was how much can we really realize, like, from that standpoint, what we would like to realize, like if you say, how are, you know, the power, the relationship of power, you know, when you have these the big companies we mentioned from time to time, and then these initiatives, these alternative platforms. And I mean, Tilman, you mentioned the word expectations quite I think 2 or 3 times, and that's for me also interesting, to deal with that expectation and to be in this kind of to deal with that big power of the companies, and then to organize these expectations actually and the possibilities we have.
It's a generational project, you know.
Okay.
As I've gotten older, I've come to terms with the fact that some things take 20 years. But in the meantime, the question is how to, leverage whatever's happening as best you can, so that you don't lose your entire shirt in the process, and that you have the opportunity to play around with some of these things that other people have made, because we went from a system where access was throttled to a time when there's like tremendous amounts of material, and now attention is throttled. So how to adjust for that mental model and that actual model out there.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Absolutely.
But the good thing is, I mean, we had this regulations and limitations and laws and stuff that would, in a way, narrow our space of possibilities. But on the other hand, we had the freedom of not having to develop something that makes money, because it was no commercial endeavor, and we could do whatever we want and just do it. And that's also what I really like about the collaboratory, like the Grembach modules. They're completely useless is not the right word. They have not really a purpose or any meaningful. Not meaningful is also the wrong word. I mean, they're just creative ideas of how could an interaction look like, or what could an interaction be like, where you create your safe space. You just create like this organic form, and then type a few words, and then you save it, and it's there for others to see. So it's like, it has no real commercial value or whatever, but at the same time, it's some novelty, and it gave us the freedom to just build stuff just that came out of our mind, and not have to limit to the restriction of how does this serve the user, or how does this make any money or something. And even with the Seinem magazine, of course, we had to provide a limited pool of images to prevent people from uploading images where they don't have the rights for, or they have some content that we don't want to show in the collaboratory and stuff. But from the user side, this limitation is also, sometimes it's good to be limited. You have a set range of options and possibilities, and then within this range, you have to be creative on your own. And this can also be in times where everything is possible and every information is always accessible. This can also be a very, very nice experience, and then recreate or unleash creativity. It's like the early days of web development, where you use table graphics and little borders to create layouts, and then people made crazy stuff, and everybody was like, wow. Or the Game Boy, where you only had like 2 or 4 colors and this limited set of sounds, and people created the nicest games, and even some weird effects nobody would have thought about. So I think that's really it's not only limitations, it's also a lot of freedom in the collaboratory.
Cool. I think we are now in this very sweet spot. It's like the early 90s when the internet just came into the lives and into our daily lives, and we kind of have the same experience now with what Facebook announced as the Metaverse, right? This digital space where we meet online. Now we have Zoom. I mean, this is probably not the solution for the next 20 years, I guess. So the whole world is developing new ideas how we can collaborate in a digital space, and this is super, super interesting to follow, I think.
Yeah,
even the pandemic, in a sense, sparked so many new ideas of creative whatever. Like we had this supper club. They were organizing like a huge dinner for like 30 people, and everybody was going there, but then it didn't work anymore. So they changed their routine, and they're now providing the image pre-cooked in Weggläsern, and they bring it to your home and you cook it yourself, and then you return the glasses, and it's also super nice, and it works really well, and it's these things wouldn't have come up without the limitations, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I really appreciate about the collaborator is that it's fairly horizontal in how you navigate it, where, for example, like a lot of the sort of teleconferencing platform reviews really are quite, you know, like you can mute someone if you don't want to, if you're the moderator, that create a completely different way of how we interact with each other. And maybe sort of, was these questions about how to keep the collaboratory a democratic, or how to do that, or create a democratic space in the digital? Were those things that were also affecting your decisions and how you coded and programmed and designed this space?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the code, Tilman mentioned that we use this also this open source software. You can tell more about that, but of course, I mean, the bubble or these balls for us are metaphor for we're just, you know, we just, all of us are balls. I mean, you can go vertical, as you saw. You know, you can use as soon as you found the space bar, you can really, you know, go vertical. But yeah, and this is for us. We talked about, like, do we want to have different avatars? Do we want to have photos and all that stuff? And at the end, we had this little range of colors, but not too much, you know. But to have a kind of a character, special character, but at least you're just a ball. So that was a big, we really talked a lot about those very small decisions or small things, and that's also, it's good that you mentioned again the metaverse. This is something you can really also you can really be kind of afraid of, or you can be or just, you know, really be thoughtful, or we have to be thoughtful what will happen there, and how democratic something like that will be, you know. So this is important thing.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting questions we've been grappling with at Immerse for this issue is that, you know, early conceptions of the metaverse were that it was a closed environment that you put your head into, kind of like those things that Tilman was showing, and you know, and you inhabited it. But the current interpretation by many people is that the metaverse is a thing that you move through online and offline through augmented and mixed and virtual reality, and that it's like a spin. It's a way in which the digital experience and the physical experience are going to be not only merging, but it's going to be hard for us to distinguish them from one another, because it's like the way we now, you know, go to bed with our phones next to our heads on the pillow. You know, it just becomes part of our everyday life. And so A, that's kind of sinister, but B, it brings across an interesting set of problems around parallels to the open source communities and ways in which we're going to sort of own and package up and protect our identities and our avatars across these like multiple environments owned by various people. And, you know, like it just sort of creates a different relationship to experience and these legal regimes that is going to take a lot of practice and regulating to shake out.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. In a way that brings us full circle again to this question of the archaeology of the digital, sort of what's going to remain, right? Because archaeology is understood as this like ancient study of ancient and recent human past through material remains. And question is what digital remains will be left. And this is, I think, also where zines and digital the digital world collide, is because that they're like ephemera in the same that they are sort of material manifestations in a way. So maybe that's sort of a question to throw into the room. What will remain?
Yeah, the archiving piece is so complicated. I mean, I worked at the Library of Congress, and then 3 decades later, I was working at the Internet Archive, and it's really difficult to capture this history of digital innovation in process.
Yeah, there's so many problems because you have browsers who have an evolution, who change basically every few years, and especially in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, it was a very large problem. We know as the browser war between the Netscape Navigator and the Internet Explorer, which was a catastrophe because both were developing in different directions. And so there was really a huge problem. Yeah, I really like the website of Räumen.org, which is from the new museum, and the internet art collection, which is extremely interesting. So I still think, I sometimes ask myself why internet art is not that popular. So I don't see huge exhibitions in Germany or in Europe where we display net art, which is an extremely interesting and highly subversive art form, very critical also about all these technological developments. Yeah, this is the best book. If you want to buy it, you have to pay, I think, 200 euros or something. I've got one here in my, or at home. Yeah, it's a large problem. And yeah, I don't know exactly what to do there. Maybe just establish a culture of writing solid software, which means that you don't use the most recent frameworks, which means that you embrace very simple ways of working with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But this, of course, restricts yourself, and you won't be able to express yourself with the most recent technological components.
But sometimes the archiving is also very dependent on the community. I'm just thinking about all these game emulators that emulate, like any ancient video game console can be emulated nowadays, because some people write these emulators so you can still keep on playing these games, because the people have so many fond memories of these games that they think it's worth to write the emulator, right? And this is, if the stuff you have built now is still relevant in the future, I think somebody will take care of trying to maintain it in a way. But if it's not, maybe it gets lost. I don't know. I mean, just yesterday I stumbled upon a box in the cellar with all my old CD-ROMs and all my backups from like when we used to have CD-ROM drives. And at least there was some physical, tangible thing there. But now everything's just digital and in the cloud. And if this goes down at some point, it's all going to be gone anyway. Yeah, so it's quite
so
interesting.
It's a cliffhanger in a way, how develop, and maybe that's also a good place to end our discussion tonight. We have gone through a bunch of strategies, archiving methods, tools, and thank you so much for all your contributions. At this point, I would open up to the audience if there are any questions that you pressing questions or thoughts. Looks like there are no questions, which is a shame, but I'm sure that everyone is deeply inspired and has a lot of food for thought. So thank you so much for your time. And I wish everyone a lot of fun in the collaboratory. And then also a lovely rest of the week. Thank you so much for having us, Linda House.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, very nice. I should have made up a question for myself now.